Hey, welcome back. So this section is about a topic called recursion. And I think often recursion comes with a lot of baggage. A lot of the students that I've taught in person have heard of the term recursion and approach it with a bit of apprehension. It's somewhat intimidating. And I think that's because it's a little bit tricky to wrap your head around at first. But then once it clicks, it's one of those things that once the pieces fall into place, I think most people don't struggle as much to understand it, and they don't have to. It becomes sort of second nature once you understand how it works. But there is a bit of that first hurdle. And what I want to do, I'm not trying to scare anyone, but what I want to do is actually teach the exact way that I was taught recursion. In my first computer science class in high school, AP Java, there was this teacher. Oh my gosh, what was his name? Mr. Carlson. There we go. I remembered his name. And he read a story to us, a very short story, that helps explain this idea behind recursion. So all that I'll say to preface this is that recursion is it's a different way of thinking about writing solutions. So we can write a solution to a problem the non-recursive way, which is called iterative or iteratively. And then there's also the recursive way. And I know that's insanely vague. So first I'm going to hop into this story. It shouldn't take more than like 30 seconds or a minute. Once upon a time, there was Martin, a little boy named Martin. This was way back before there were computers, back when there was wizards in our world. There were wizards, at least, and alchemists. And there's this little boy named Martin who was training with them. And there was an angry dragon named the Dragon. And he happened to look like the new dragon emoji. So one day, Martin is talking to some wizard, and this wizard gives him a task. The wizard says, I need you to go talk to the dragon, and I'm going to give you a list of numbers, and I need you to come back and tell me if any of the numbers on that list are odd. And they didn't have computers, and they, for some reason, were unable to do this on their own. They needed the help of the dragon. So Martin goes up with his list of numbers. You can see it here. And he says, excuse me, Mr. Dragon, can you tell me if any of these numbers on the list are odd? And the dragon is not in a very good mood. He's a little hungry. It's been a while since he had something to eat. So he's angry. And he says, I'm sorry, boy. I'll only tell you if the first number in that list is odd. So he's not super angry. He doesn't immediately burn him alive and eat him. Instead, he just says, sort of grumpily, I'll only tell you if the first number in that list is odd. And Martin is very upset because he doesn't want to fail at his task. He says, I need to know if any of the numbers are odd, not just the first one. And the dragon is even angrier, and he says, sorry, I'll only tell you if the first number is odd. That's my final offer. That's all I'll do. So then the boy has a little bit of a think. What could he do? And Martin comes up with a solution. He goes to the dragon, and he says, okay, fine. What about the first number in this list? And he gives him the whole list. And the dragon says, that's not odd. It's even, as we can see. Then Martin comes back and he says, all right, what about the first number in this other different list? It's not odd. He does it again. What about this number, the first number in this list? Is that odd? And the dragon says, it's not odd. And the dragon's getting pretty bored. And then finally he says, what about this number in this list, the first number? There's only one number left. It's not odd. And then finally, Martin comes back one more time. What about the first number in this list? And it's an empty list. And the dragon is very upset. He says, that's an empty list, you moron. There isn't a number in there. How could anything be even or odd? There's nothing in there. And then Martin triumphantly says, aha! So all the numbers are even in that list. And then the dragon says, I never said that. I only told you if the first number of a list was odd. So then Martin gets out a pen or pencil, or I guess a quill, or maybe just a stick in the dirt. There we go. And he starts drawing, and he says, well, I gave you this first long list. You said the first number was not odd. Then I gave you this shorter list, and you said the first number was not odd. Then I gave you this other list. You said the first number was not odd. Then I gave you this list. You said the first number was not odd. Then I gave you this empty list, and you got really mad at me. But you said that there's nothing in there to be either even or odd. So I can conclude that there's no odds in this list. There's no odds in that list. No odds in that one and that one. And finally, there are no odds in the entire first list that I asked you about. So, no odds. And the dragon says, oh, congratulations, boy. You have discovered recursion. He's very condescending. And then Martin is slightly puzzled, and he says, wait, you knew about this the whole time? And it turns out this whole thing was just a test. That's the way I spin it. It's a test, because otherwise it's a pretty big waste of time to send this kid to a dragon. It's a pretty dangerous operation, honestly. Dragons are very unpredictable, just to find out if the list of numbers is odd. But on that day, Martin discovered recursion. So that's the way that I was first introduced to recursion. I'm sure you could update that and make it a little more exciting. But the idea is basically taking one problem and doing it over and over on a smaller piece or on a changing piece until you hit some endpoint, which we call the base case. So we'll get to that. First, let's talk about our objectives for the section. So we're going to define more specifically what recursion is and how it's useful. We'll understand the two essential components of writing a recursive function. There's two things that have to be there. Then we're going to talk about something called the call stack, which if you haven't heard about, I'll explain what it is. And then we'll also talk about how it relates to recursion, how we can use the Chrome developer tools to debug the call stack and recursive function calls. We'll talk about helper method recursion and pure recursion and compare them. And we'll solve a bunch of challenges and have a ton of exercises. So this is going to be a little bit of a crazy ride for this section. We've got a lot to talk about. Remember what I said, recursion takes a little bit to click. Once you get it, you get it. But if you struggle with it, that's totally normal. I have seen many students take days that sounds scary, but take a lot of time to get it. But then once they get it, they understand it, and it's not a problem. So don't beat yourself up. If you have to review some of this or come back later in an online course, I know it's hard because it looks like this is, 6 or 7 videos of content, and it only takes maybe 30 minutes or an hour to watch it all. But that's not the time that I intend for somebody to really take to absorb the content. So just keep that in mind. If you're feeling behind, that's normal with this. It's tricky. Okay,